It begins, as it always does, with a smell. Not the smell of blood, though there has been enough of that to fill oceans. Not the smell of ozone from ruptured void shields, or the chemical stink of promethium fires. Those are simple smells. Honest, in their way. No. This is the smell of old parchment. Of dust motes dancing in stagnant air. It is the smell of a library where the books are bound in human skin and the ink is made of forgotten tears. It is the smell of a plan, centuries in the making, finally unfolding. I smell it now, as I speak to you. It clings to the inside of my nostrils, a sweet, cloying rot. It is the perfume of gods who do not know they are dead, performing a play for an audience of ghosts. You are listening to me. A ghost. A whisper in the static between stars. You think you are safe, tucked away in your reality, listening to a story. A dark fantasy. A what if? But what if is the most dangerous question in all of creation. It is a key. And by asking it, by even thinking it, you have just placed that key into a lock you did not know was there. You are turning it. Right now. Can you feel it? The slight resistance? The grinding of tumblers that were not forged of metal, but of possibility? Listen closely. I will tell you how the world ended. Not with a bang, not with a whimper, but with a single, perfect, triumphant yes. My name was Alistair. A remembrancer attached to the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet. My purpose was to chronicle the Great Crusade. To weave the raw, brutal facts of conquest into poetry, into song, into something the citizens back home could swallow without choking on the truth. I was on the vengeful spirit. I was there when the war master, Horus Lupercal, the brightest son of a dead god, lay dying on the moon of Davin. I saw the chaos-sickened blade pierce his flesh. I saw the light in his eyes gutter like a dying star. And I was there when the Cabal came. They did not arrive in warships. They did not announce themselves with fanfare. They simply were. One moment, the Medicae deck was a frantic orchestra of despair, the apothecaries fighting a war against a disease that had no name. The next, a stillness fell. A silence so profound it felt like a physical blow. And then, the smell. Old parchment. Dust. There were two of them. A tall, slender Xenos of a species I had never seen, its skin like polished obsidian, its eyes holding the cold light of distant nebulae. They called him Slaw. And with him, a hulking, reptilian creature, breathing slow, deliberate breaths that smelled of swamp gas and iron. They called him Rasthra. They moved through our legionaries, through our Primarch's most loyal sons, as if they were mist. No one challenged them. No one could. It was as if a law of physics had been suspended. They walked to the stasis casket where Horus lay, his magnificent body a ruined temple, his spirit flickering. Slaw placed a long, six-fingered hand upon the casket. The Xenos did not look at the comatose demigod. He looked at me. His voice was not a sound. It was a thought, inserted directly into the meat of my brain. You are the rememberer, it said. You will witness. You will chronicle the salvation. And the cost. That was the first time I felt it. The cold, delicate touch of a plan that was not my own, settling on my shoulders like a mantle of ice. The Cabal had a proposition. A cure. Not for the body. Horus's body was already healing. The flesh of a pre-march is a stubborn, tenacious thing. No, they offered a cure for the soul. The corruption of chaos, the whisper of the gods of the warp, had already taken root in his spirit. The Davin ritual had opened a door, and something was waiting on the other side, ready to step through. The Cabal's plan was not to shut that door. It was to guide what came through. They spoke to Malagurst, to the Mournival. They spoke in visions, in probabilities, in cold, hard logic. They showed them a future. The Horus heresy as it was meant to be. A galaxy drowning in blood. Horus slain by the Emperor entombed upon a golden throne, a rotting carcass kept animate by a sacrifice of 1,000 souls a day. The Imperium becoming a stagnant, fanatical nightmare, a corpse empire worshipping a dying man. A future of endless, grinding war. This is the path you walk, Slaw's voice echoed in all our minds. A Pyrrhic victory that is, in its essence, the greatest defeat. Then, they showed another path. A gamble. A sublime, terrifying risk. Let us guide the War Master's resurrection, Raththrow hissed, his voice a physical rasp in the air. We will not purge the chaos from him. We will refine it. We will help him absorb its power, but retain his will. His reason. He will become the ultimate predator of the warp. A god emperor who understands the nature of the abyss and can wield it as a tool. He will win. He will slay the emperor of mankind. He will unite humanity under a single, undisputed rule, and in doing so, he will starve the chaos gods. The logic was chilling, elegant, and insane. Chaos feeds on strife, on war, on emotion. A united, purpose-driven humanity, under the absolute control of a lucid Horus, would be a psychic dead zone. The great game would end. The gods would wither. The warp would, over millennia, calm. Humanity would be saved. Enslaved, perhaps, but saved. Abaddon was the first to agree. His loyalty was to Horus, not to the Emperor, not to an Imperium that had failed its brightest sun. A clean victory, he growled. Not this protracted, bloody civil war. He wins. We win. The galaxy is ours. One by one they fell. Malagurst, Sadiri, even the noble-hearted Loken was swayed by the sheer, brutal calculus of it. Billions would die in the final, decisive battle. But trillions would live, in a stable, peaceful galaxy, forever free of the chaos threat. It was a beautiful lie. And I, the Rememberer, was tasked with painting it in the most beautiful colors I could find. The rituals began. Not in the dark, blood-soaked caverns of a demon world, but in the clean, sterile light of the vengeful spirit, Apothecarian. They brought forth artifacts. A stone from a dead world that hummed with a silent frequency. A vial of liquid that was not liquid, but captured time. A silver needle, long as my forearm, etched with geometries that hurt the eyes. They did not chant. They calculated. Their voices wove complex mathematical formulae into the air, and the air listened. The light bent around Horus's body. I watched, my data slate forgotten in my hand, as the physical wounds on the War Master's body sealed not with scar tissue, but with patterns of silver and gold, like celestial circuitry. But it was the smell that told the true story. The old parchment smell grew stronger, mingling now with the scent of ozone and something else, something like hot, polished metal. The smell of a mind being rewritten. I was given a new duty. I was to sit by his side, as he slept this enchanted sleep, and read to him. Not from the imperial truth. Not from battle strategies. I was to read from my own works. The poems I had written about his glory. The songs of his conquests. The story of his father's love. Remind him of what he fights for, Slaw instructed, his black eyes holding no reflection. Anchor his humanity. It is the core around which we will forge the armor. So I read. For hours. For days. My voice grew hoarse. I watched his face, once a masterpiece of martial perfection, now a placid mask. But sometimes his eyelids would flutter. And in those fleeting moments, I did not see the noble Horus I had chronicled. I saw a frantic, trapped thing staring out from behind his eyes. A scream given form. I would stop reading, my heart hammering against my ribs. My lord, and the moment would pass. His face would smooth. The Cabal members would nod, a silent, approving gesture. And the humming in the ship would grow just a little louder. This was my new normal. My daily life in the horror. The repetitive cycle. Read the poetry. Watch the trapped thing in his eyes. Smell the dust and the ozone. Listen to the hum. Write my lies. I started to dream of libraries. Infinite libraries, where the shelves rearranged themselves when I wasn't looking, and the books were all blank, waiting for me to fill them with a story whose ending was already written. He awoke. There was no gasp. No cry of pain. One moment, he was a statue on the bier. The next, his eyes were open. They were not the eyes of Horus. Oh, they were the same color. The same shape. But the light behind them was different. It was colder. Sharper. It was the light of a star that had gone supernova and, against all natural law, had collapsed back in on itself, containing all that fury, all that energy, into a single, focused point. He sat up. The silvery patterns on his skin pulsed with a soft, internal light. He looked at his hands, turning them over, examining them as if he had never seen them before. Abaddon was the first to kneel. My War Master. Horus's gaze fell upon him. There was no warmth, no recognition, only assessment. Like a machinist evaluating a tool. Ezekiel, Horus said. His voice was the same, and yet it was layered. As if 1,000 voices were speaking in perfect unison with his, a celestial choir singing a single, devastating note. The plan proceeds? It does, my lord, Abaddon said, his head still bowed. The Cabal has guided your ascension. Horus's eyes shifted to Slaw and Rasthra. The air grew thick, heavy. I felt my ears pop. You have our gratitude, Horus said, and the words were so perfectly calibrated, so devoid of any genuine emotion, that they were more terrifying than a scream of rage. Your part in this is concluded. Slaw bowed his head. The final stages require our oversight, Lupercal. The subtleties of the empiric weave are, I understand the weave, Horus interrupted. His voice did not rise in volume, but it pressed down on the room, on my soul. I see it now. The strings that lead back to you. To your kind. You sought to create a weapon. A scalpel to excise a cancer. He stood. He was the same height, the same physical form, but he seemed to fill the entire chamber, his shadow stretching out behind him, impossibly long and deep. But a scalpel is a tool, Horus continued, taking a step towards them. And tools do not dictate their use. Rasthra let out a low, guttural snarl, raising a clawed hand. A ripple of raw psychic power, visible as a distortion in the air, shot towards the War Master. Horus did not move. He simply looked at it. The ripple struck an invisible barrier an inch from his chest and unraveled. The energy didn't dissipate. It was taken apart, its component parts disassembled and absorbed into the silver patterns on his skin, which glowed brightly for a moment. He looked at Rasthra. The reptilian Xenos froze, a statue of flesh and terror. You sought to use my humanity as an anchor, Horus said, his voice now a whisper that scraped at the inside of my skull. But you miscalculated its weight. He made a slight, flicking gesture with his fingers. Rasthra did not scream. He came apart. Not into gore, but into data. His form dissolved into a cloud of shimmering, golden numbers and symbols, a complex equation that hung in the air for a single, horrifying second before it too was drawn into Horus, the silver on his skin flaring once more. Gone. Erased from existence as if he had never been. Horus turned his gaze to Slaw. The obsidian Xenos stood perfectly still, its face an unreadable mask. You will bear witness to your failure, Horus said. You will return to your hidden places. You will tell your Cabal that the weapon has chosen its target. And you will wait. For I will come for you, last of all. Slaw did not bow. It did not speak. It simply faded. It became transparent, then intangible, then it was a memory, then it was nothing. The War Master was now the only power in the room. He turned his layered gaze to Abaddon, who was still kneeling, his face a mask of awe and terror. Rise, my son, Horus said, and this time, there was a ghost of the old warmth, a perfect imitation that was more chilling than the coldness. The true work begins now. The Cabal thought they were using a plan to save the galaxy. They were merely polishing the blade for its true purpose. He looked at me then. His eyes pinned me to the spot. Remembrance, sir, he said. You have a new story to tell. The smell of old parchment was gone, replaced by the scent of lightning. An absolute, utter silence. The change was not immediate. It was insidious. A drip feed of perfection. The War Master called a war council. He stood before his commanders, and he was magnificent. He spoke of the Emperor's lies, of the imperial truth as a shackle, of the need for a new order, a human order, free from the ignorance that had left them vulnerable to the predations of the warp. He spoke of the Cabal's attempted manipulation and how he had turned their own weapon against them. He was brilliant, charismatic, unassailable. His logic was a fortress. His words were honey and steel. And they believed. Oh, how they believed. But I, the rememberer, saw the cracks. The seams in the perfect performance. I saw how he never blinked. Not once. His eyes, those cold, layered stars, remained open, absorbing everything. I saw how he never ate, never drank. He would sit through feasts, a goblet of wine before him, untouched. He sustained himself on something else. On the adoration in the room. On the fervent belief of his sons. It was a taste in the air, a metallic tang on the back of my tongue, like sucking on a battery. I was tasked with drafting the new manifestos. The declarations that would be sent to every legion, every world. The words he gave me were perfect. They were the absolute, undeniable truth. To read them was to be converted. They bypassed reason and spoke directly to the soul. But when I wrote them, my hand would cramp. The letters themselves seemed to resist being formed on the page. They would blur, as if trying to escape their own meaning. I started to see the lines of text not as words, but as the same silvery circuitry that now covered his body. A script of control. The Luna Wolves, now the sons of Horus, were changing too. Their armor, once the pale gray of a lunar dawn, began to darken at the edges, taking on a green, black, and silver livery. It was a beautiful, menacing scheme. But when they marched, their footsteps fell in perfect, absolute unison. There was no variance, no individual rhythm. It was the sound of a single, enormous machine. I tried to speak to Captain Loken about it. I found him in the training cages, practicing his sword forms with a frantic, desperate energy. "The War Master is saved, Alistair," he said, his voice tight. "He is more than he was. He sees further than any of us." "But at what cost, Garviel?" I whispered. "He erased a being from existence with a thought." Loken stopped, his chest heaving. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Rasthra was a Xenos manipulator. He received a traitor's end. The War Master's power is a gift. It is what we need to win. "Is it winning?" I asked, my voice trembling. "If we become the very thing we sought to destroy?" He looked at me then, and in his eyes, I saw the same trapped thing I had seen in Horus's during his slumber. A flicker of the good man, drowning. "There is no we anymore, remembrance, sir," he said, his voice hollow. "There is only the War Master's will. It is easier if you just accept the tune. It's a beautiful tune, is it not?" He turned and resumed his practice, his strikes more brutal, more precise than before. The clash of his power sword against the practice dummy was the only sound, a sharp, lonely counterpoint to the ever-present hum of the ship. A hum that was now, unmistakably, a melody. The fleet moved. Not with the brutal, straightforward thrust of an attack, but with the elegant, complex dance of a celestial clockmaker. We did not conquer worlds. We assimilated them. I witnessed the compliance of Sarosh. It was not a battle. It was a conversion. The War Master did not deploy drop pods. He descended alone, in a small, unarmed shuttle. He walked out onto the main concourse of the planet's capital, a sprawling city of graceful spires. The planetary governor, surrounded by his royal guard, met him with drawn weapons and defiant shouts. Horus stood before them, silent. He simply looked, and one by one, the guards lowered their weapons. Their faces slackened, their eyes glazing over. The governor, a proud, stubborn man, fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I see," he whispered, his voice choked with awe. "I have been blind. Forgive me, my lord. Your truth, it is so clear." The entire planet swore fealty within the hour. There was no destruction, no loss of life. It was the most peaceful, most terrifying thing I had ever seen. That night, in the grand hall of the governor's palace, a celebration was held. The people of Sarosh, now loyal subjects of the War Master, laughed and danced. The music was beautiful. The four-note melody was everywhere, woven into every song, every toast. I stood at the edge of the crowd, a glass of amasec in my hand that I could not bring myself to drink. The liquid smelled of nothing. It had no scent, just like the food had no taste, just like the air had no life. A young woman, a native of Sarosh with eyes the color of violets, approached me. She was smiling, but it was a vacant, perfect smile. "Is it not wonderful?" she said, her voice a lilting echo of the melody. "The noise is gone. The doubt. The fear. It's all just quiet now. And in the quiet, we can finally hear his song." She took my hand. Her skin was cool, unnaturally smooth. "You are the Rememberer," she said, and my blood ran cold. "You must learn the tune. It will make the words so much easier to write." She leaned forward, and with a chilling intimacy, she hummed the four-note phrase directly into my ear. It was not a sound. It was a worm. I felt it burrow through my ear canal, into my brain, settling deep in the core of me. She pulled back, her violet eyes looking into mine. And for a moment, her perfect smile flickered. For a fraction of a second, I saw absolute, mind-shattering terror in her gaze. A silent scream from the prison of her own flesh. Then it was gone, replaced by the placid, beautiful emptiness. She drifted back into the dancing crowd. I stood there, frozen. The melody was in my head now. I could feel it, a silvery thread woven through my thoughts. And a horrifying realization dawned on me. The Cabal's plan had succeeded. Horus was saved. He was lucid. He was in control. He was winning. And his victory was a plague of perfect, absolute silence. My quarters on the vengeful spirit were no longer my own. They were a recording studio for a dirge I never meant to compose. The data slate on my desk glowed, awaiting my words. The manifestos. The hymns. The new history. The melody in my head made it easy. The words flowed now, without cramping, without resistance. They arranged themselves into perfect, irrefutable paragraphs. They were beautiful lies, polished to a mirror shine. I tried to fight it. I tried to write the truth. The War Master is a hollow god. He consumes will instead of food. His peace is a lobotomy. The words would not form. My hand would freeze. The melody would swell in my mind, drowning out the heresy, soothing the panic. It was a mental laxative, flushing out the unpleasant thoughts. I took to whispering in the dark, reciting the old poems. The real poems, from before. The ones about a heroic, flawed giant who loved his father and his brothers. I whispered the names of those who had stood against him, the loyalists. Sanguinius. Dorn. The Khan. Speaking their names was like licking a battery. A jolt of painful, beautiful reality. But the memory of them was fading, becoming soft at the edges, like a water-damaged painting. The melody was sanding down the sharp corners of my past, making it smooth, palatable, aligned with the new truth. I started having conversations with the silence in my room. The silence had a texture now. It was thick, velvety. It pressed in on me. Is this not better? The silence seemed to whisper, not in words, but in concepts. No more conflict. No more pain. Just the tune. The beautiful, simple tune. I don't want simplicity. I hissed into the void, my fists clenched. I want the mess. I want the noise. The noise is doubt, the silence replied. Doubt is the seed of chaos. The War Master is cutting out the cancer. You are being healed. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of my viewport. My face was looking back, but it was calm. Too calm. The lines of worry and late-night study were smoothing out. My eyes had a placid, accepting sheen. I was becoming like the woman from Sorosh. I slammed my fist against the wall. The pain was a bright, shocking flare. A sensation that was entirely my own. It was the most real thing I had felt in weeks. I did it again. And again. I split my knuckles. The blood was a dark, beautiful red against the pallor of my skin. The coppery smell was a symphony after the scentless void I had been breathing. The melody in my head stuttered. Just for a second. Pain. Pain was the key. It was a spike I could drive into the gears of this perfect, humming machine. It was my anchor. My humanity. I knew then what I had to do. To remember, I would have to hurt. Constantly. The escalation came from outside. A splinter of the Alpha Legion, operating on some long-forgotten, contradictory order, attacked one of our compliance systems. They had not received the new tune. They were still playing the old, chaotic symphony of war. The War Master's response was surgical. We translated from the warp at the edge of the system. The enemy fleet was there, waiting, their ships painted in the Hydra patterns of the XXDH Legion. Horus stood on the command bridge, a giant amidst the glowing hololiths and chattering servitors. He did not give a rousing speech. He did not even raise his voice. He simply pointed. There, a single ship, the Ouroboros, broke from our formation. It was not one of our grand battleships. It was a small, sleek vessel, its hull now sheathed in the same green, black, and silver as our legionaries. It flew, not like a ship, but like a thrown knife. It plunged directly into the heart of the Alpha Legion fleet. It did not fire its lasers. It did not launch its torpedoes. As it passed each enemy ship, it emitted a pulse of pure, white light. A silent, expanding sphere. Where the light touched the Alpha Legion ships, they stopped. Their engines died. Their weapon systems powered down. Their running lights winked out. They became derelicts in the span of a heartbeat. Then, the Ouroboros reached the Alpha Legion flagship. It did not destroy it. It docked with it. On the bridge hololith, we watched the feed from the boarding party's helms. They marched through silent corridors. The Alpha Legionnaires they encountered were not fighting. They were standing at their posts, motionless. Their helmets were off. Their faces were frozen in expressions of confusion, their eyes vacant. The tune had been broadcast. They had been pacified. The boarding party found the Alpha Legion commander in his strategium. The warrior was fighting it. I could see the sweat on his brow, the tremble in his hands as he tried to raise his bolter. Resistance is an error in the equation, one of the sons of Horus said, his voice a flat, affectless monotone. Be corrected. He touched the Alpha Legionnaire's forehead. The commander screamed. It was a short, clipped sound, then it was cut off. His body shuddered violently, then went still. When he looked up, his eyes were clear. Vacant. Peaceful. The system is compliant, he said, his voice now a perfect echo of the sons of Horus warrior. The War Master's will is done. The Ouroboros undocked and returned to our fleet. Behind it, the entire Alpha Legion armada powered up again. But now, their ships fell into a perfect, synchronized formation with ours. They had been added to the chorus. Horus turned from the hololith. He looked at me, standing at my scribe's station in the corner. You see, remembrance, sir, he said, the layered voices a soft caress that felt like a violation. No waste. No glorious, futile last stands. Only efficiency. Only peace. He smiled. It was a perfect, fatherly smile. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. I felt a warm trickle on my palm. I had been clutching the sharpened stylus I used for etching permanent records into ceramite tablets. I had driven its point into my hand, the pain a desperate, private shield against the overwhelming, peaceful horror of it all. The War Master's eyes flickered down to my bleeding hand for an instant. His smile did not waver. He knew. Of course he knew. He approved. The pain kept me sharp. It kept me useful. A tool that could hone itself. Terror grew closer. You could feel it. A tension in the crew, a psychic pressure building like a storm. The final compliance. The reports came in. The Imperium was in disarray. The Lion was bogged down in the galactic east. The Wolf King was howling at shadows. Gilliman was trying to hold 1,000 lines at once. They were disunited. Chaotic. We were a single, focused thought. The War Master spent his days in meditation. He no longer gave speeches. His will was transmitted directly, a psychic imperative that every soul in the fleet could feel. A constant, gentle pressure guiding our actions. A current we were all swimming in. I found myself drawn to the observation decks, staring into the warp. The Empyrean itself was changing around us. The chaotic, ever-shifting colors were smoothing out, forming into long, elegant swirls of green and silver. The screaming faces that sometimes manifested in the psych-reactive mist were now silent, their features arranged into expressions of placid acceptance. Even the warp was being brought to heel. It was during one of these vigils that I was approached by a figure I barely recognized. It was Garvio Loken, but he was a ghost of the man I had known. His face was haggard, his eyes sunken and bright with a feverish intensity. He smelled of ozone and unwashed fatigue. Alistair, he whispered, his voice raw. You have to help me. I looked at him, my own mind hazy from the constant melody, from the pain of the fresh cuts I kept hidden under my robes. Help you with what, Captain? The tune, he gasped, clutching his head. I can't get it out. It's in my dreams. It's in my blood. I hear it in the beat of my hearts. It is the song of victory, I said, The words coming to me automatically, a line from one of my own hymns. No, he snarled, grabbing my arm. His grip was like iron. It's a lie. It's a tuning fork. It's making us all resonate at the same frequency, wiping out the dissonance, the individuality. Don't you see? He's not building an empire. He's building a choir, a single, unified voice. And ours are the voices he's going to use. He was shaking. I could feel the conflict raging within him, a war between the indoctrinated loyalty and the last shreds of his own soul. I remember Istvan, he choked out. I remember the betrayal. The death of Torgadon. Of Tarek. That pain, it was real. This. He gestured wildly at the peaceful, orderly ship around us. This is a dream. A beautiful, suffocating dream. I need to wake up. I need to remember the pain. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. You're the rememberer. You have to remember for me. You have to remind me who I am. He was a temptation. A glimpse of the old, noisy, messy reality. The reality of doubt and pain and honor and betrayal. It was so ugly. And so beautiful. I opened my mouth. I wanted to give him the words. I wanted to share my pain, my anchor. But the melody swelled, a gentle, firm hand on my mind. The War Masters will press down, a soothing, undeniable presence. Loken is malfunctioning. The thought entered my head, clean and clear. He requires correction. I looked at Garviel Loken, my friend, and I saw a broken tool. The pain is the sickness, Captain. I heard myself say, my voice calm, distant. The War Master is the cure. The light in his eyes died. The last ember of his resistance guttered out. He released my arm, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Yes, he whispered, his voice now a hollow echo. The cure. He turned and walked away, his footsteps falling into perfect time with the rhythmic thrum of the ship. He had been reconciled, absorbed back into the chorus. I stood there, alone, the sharpened stylus a cold, hard weight in my pocket. I had chosen the tune over the noise. I had chosen peace over a friend. I had never felt more damned. The soul system. The cradle of humanity. It was supposed to be the most fortified place in the galaxy. A ring of iron and fire. It was a graveyard. The Imperial fleet was there. Thousands of ships. The Martian shipyards. Battle stations the size of small moons. It was the most powerful armada ever assembled. And it was silent. As we translated from the warp, there was no challenge. No hails. No opening volleys. The ships of the Imperium just hung there, in the black, their running lights dark, their engines cold. The vengeful spirit led the way, a shepherd guiding its flock. We passed the first picket ships. They were dead hulks. As we drew closer, I could see them through the viewport. Their hulls were intact. No battle damage. It was as if every single soul on board had simply stopped. The Ouroboros flitted out ahead of us, a hummingbird of death. It pulsed its white light, and the dead ships of the Imperium began to power up. One by one, their reactors ignited, their navigation lights flickered on. And one by one, they turned, swinging their prows around to join our formation. They fell into line with perfect, silent precision. We passed Mars. The red planet was dark. No energy signatures from the Forge worlds. No transmissions. Just silence. The Ouroboros dove into the atmosphere. We watched on the hololith. It flew over the great Forge cities. The streets were empty. The titans of the Legio Ignatum stood frozen in their hangars, like colossal statues. The Ouroboros pulsed, and a wave of white light washed over the planet. A few minutes later, the forges of Mars reignited, their fires burning with a clean, green-tinged flame. The planet was back online. It was ours. There was no war. There was only an integration. The greatest battle in human history was being won without a single shot being fired. The horror was not in the violence. It was in the absence of it. It was in the quiet, unstoppable tide of compliance washing over the heart of humanity, extinguishing every spark of resistance, of individuality, of life. We approached Terra, the throne world. It was beautiful, a gleaming jewel of white and blue. I could see the lattice of orbital defenses. They were powered. They were aiming. But they did not fire. The vengeful spirit flew directly towards the Emperor's palace. We entered the atmosphere, the ship groaning around us. We were not fired upon. The War Master stood. He was clad not in battle plate, but in simple, gray robes. The silvery circuitry on his skin glowed softly. He carried no weapon. "It is time," he said, and his voice was a whisper that was heard across the entire planet. Time for the final reconciliation. The ship settled onto the great parade ground of the Imperial Palace. The ramps descended. Horus walked out, alone. The sons of Horus legionaries, myself included, followed at a respectful distance, a silent, gleaming tide of green and black. The place was deserted. The great golden gates were open. We walked through hallways that had echoed with the footsteps of the mightiest beings in the galaxy. They were empty. We entered the throne room. It was vast, a cathedral of impossible proportions. And there, at the far end, seated on the golden throne, was the master of mankind. The Emperor. He was not as I had imagined. He was not a shining god-king. He looked tired. His magnificent armor was scarred. His face, usually depicted as stern and majestic, was etched with a profound, cosmic weariness. And in his eyes, there was a sadness so deep, so ancient, that it threatened to swallow the universe. Arrayed before him were his last defenders. Sanguinius, the great angel, his wings spread, his face a mask of beautiful, feudal defiance. Rogal Dorn, the Praetorian, standing immovable before his father, his expression granite. A handful of custodes, their guardian spears crackling with energy. They were the last dissonant notes in the galaxy. Horus walked towards them, his steps echoing in the immense silence. "Father," Horus said, and his voice was gentle. "It is over." The Emperor looked at him. His gaze was not one of hatred, but of pity. "My son." The Emperor's voice was a physical force, rich and resonant, filled with a power that was raw, untamed, and alive. "What have you done to yourself?" "I have been saved," Horus replied. "I have seen the path to true peace. A peace without strife. Without the chaos that you, in your ignorance, allowed to fester. I have come to offer you peace." "You have come to offer me silence," the Emperor said. "You have traded your soul for equation, Horus. You have become the very antithesis of what I sought to build. Humanity, supreme. Not humanity, sanitized. Your humanity is a disease," Horus said, his voice still calm, but the layered tones within it began to sharpen. "It is a fever dream of conflict and emotion. I am the cure." Sanguinius took a step forward, his blade raised. "You are a poison, brother. A quiet, insidious poison. I will die before I see you silence my father's light." Horus looked at Sanguinius. There was no malice in his gaze, only a kind of academic interest. "You do not have to die, Sanguinius," Horus said. "You can be reconciled. You can be part of the great chorus. Your beauty, perfected by order." "Never," the angel whispered. Horus sighed. It was a sound of genuine regret, a wasted resource. He looked at Sanguinius, and the great angel froze. He did not attack. He did not move. He became a statue of flawless beauty, his wings forever outstretched, his face forever set in defiance. He was a perfect work of art, a captured moment. Horus had not killed him. He had curated him. Rogal Dorn let out a roar of anguish and charged, his massive chain blade roaring to life. Horus flicked his wrist. Dorn stopped. His armor locked. His muscles seized. He stood, a monument to stubbornness, eternally poised to strike. The custodes moved as one, golden blurs of motion. Horus did not even look at them. He simply raised his hand, palm outward. The custodes halted in mid-stride. Then, slowly, deliberately, they turned. They faced the empty hall. They assumed parade rest. Their purpose had been reassigned. They were now the eternal honor guard of a silent palace. It was just the Emperor and the War Master. The Emperor rose from the golden throne. The power that radiated from him was immense, terrifying, a storm of raw, untamed potential. It was everything Horus was not. It was messy, unpredictable, and brilliant. "You cannot win, my son," the Emperor said, and lightning crackled around his fists. "Your order is a sterility." It has no heart, no soul. It cannot create. It can only maintain. Creation is chaos, Father, Horus said, and for the first time, I heard something in his voice. Not anger, not hatred, impatience. It is imperfection. Flaw. I am offering you perfection. Then I refuse your offer, the Emperor said. And the war for the soul of humanity began. It was not a battle of swords and bolters. It was a battle of concepts. The Emperor unleashed a wave of pure, psychic fire. It was the heat of a newborn star, the passion of a first kiss, the rage of a betrayed father, the hope of a species reaching for the stars. It was life, in all its terrible, beautiful, chaotic glory. Horus did not move. The fire hit him and parted. It flowed around him, unable to touch him. He was a void, a place where emotion and passion went to die. You see, Horus said, taking a step forward. Your power is based on feeling, on belief. My power is based on truth. A simple mathematical truth. 2 + 2 = 4. Your fire cannot change that. Your love cannot change that. Your truth is subjective. Mine is absolute. The Emperor struck again, a blow that could shatter worlds, a spear of pure will. Horus caught it, not with his hand, but with his mind. He disassembled it. He showed the Emperor the equation that defined it, the probability matrices that governed it. He turned the Emperor's own attack into a harmless shower of data. You are a shaman of a dead age, Father, Horus said, taking another step. You wield forces you do not fully understand. I am understanding. I am the logic at the heart of the universe. The Emperor staggered back. The light around him flickered. He was fighting a war on a battlefield he did not comprehend. He was trying to pour water into a sieve. Horus was now before him. The Cabal thought they could control me. Horus whispered, his layered voices soft, intimate. They thought my humanity would be the anchor. But they did not understand. Humanity is the flaw. It is the variable in the equation. I have removed the variable. He reached out and placed a hand on the Emperor's chest. I am not the vessel of chaos, Horus said. I am its master. I am not its champion. I am its tax accountant. And I have come to balance the books. A light, clean and white and silent, erupted from Horus's hand. It engulfed the Emperor. The master of mankind did not scream. He looked into his son's eyes, and the sadness in his gaze was infinite. And then he was gone. Not disintegrated. Not erased. Solved. The light faded. The golden throne was empty. Horus Lupercal turned and looked at us, his legion, his choir. The silvery patterns on his skin were blazing, a constellation of absolute control. It is done, he said. And across Terra, across the entire galaxy, I knew that every human being, every former citizen of the Imperium, felt it. A gentle, final pressure settling on their minds. The last variable, reconciled. The last dissonant note, smoothed into harmony. The great game was over. Chaos had been starved. And the long, silent, peaceful twilight of humanity had begun. I have a new duty now. I am the chief remembrancer of the silent Imperium. I sit in a white room, at a white desk, on a silent Terra. The sky outside is a perpetual, soft gray. There are no storms. No sunsets. Just a calm, even light. My task is to rewrite all of history. To go back through every chronicle, every poem, every song, and edit out the mess. I remove the passions, the follies, the irrational acts of love and hate. I turn the glorious, bloody, chaotic tapestry of human history into a clean, efficient, instructional manual. It is easy work. The melody in my head guides my hand. The pain is gone now. I no longer need the stylus. I have accepted the tune. It is easier. Sometimes, I am called to the center of the palace. The golden throne is still there. But seated upon it is Horus. He does not move. He does not speak. He does not need to. His will is the air we breathe. He is the conductor of the great, galactic choir. I look at him, and I feel nothing. No awe. No fear. No love. A perfect, placid acceptance. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the silent night, when the melody is at its quietest, a memory surfaces. Like a bubble from a drowned world. I remember the smell of blood and ozone. I remember the taste of cheap amasec with Garviolocan. I remember the sound of a real, human laugh, uncalibrated, bursting forth without permission. And in those moments, a single, treacherous thought forms in my mind. A thought that feels like my own. A spark in the silence. This is not peace. This is the death rattle of the human spirit, stretched out for all eternity. Then the melody swells, gentle and firm, and the thought is smoothed away. The bubble pops. The silence returns. I am the rememberer, and I have forgotten what I am supposed to be remembering. Why am I telling you this? I don't know. A malfunction? A final, flickering spike of pain from a nerve long thought dead? Perhaps it is because you are still out there. In your reality. With your noise. Your chaos. Your what-ifs. You asked a question. What if the Cabal's plan for Horus had succeeded? This is your answer. It succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And in its success, it created a hell more perfect than any demon could ever conceive. A hell where no one screams, because they have forgotten how. I am speaking into a void, I know. This confession is a message in a bottle, thrown into the sea of possibility. But you are listening. I can feel you, on the other side of the keyhole. Your attention is a tiny, distant pinprick of chaos. Of life. It hurts. It is beautiful. Let me tell you one last story. A story I wrote, but then edited out of the records. A story for you. There was once a man who loved the sound of rain. He loved its randomness. The way it pattered against the roof without rhythm, a chaotic drum solo on the tin. When the silence came, he missed the rain most of all. So, he went to the great conductor and he asked, "Can you not make it rain?" The conductor, who was kind, said, "Of course." And he made it rain. A perfect, synthesized recording of rain, played on a loop. The same pattern every time. The same volume. The same tempo. It was rain, perfected. It was rain, made silent. The man listened to the perfect rain, and he wept. Because he realized he had not loved the rain. He had loved its noise. Its imperfection. And that was gone forever. You are the rain. Your reality, with all its pain and joy and doubt and love, is the storm. Do not wish for the calm. The calm is a lie. The Cabal sought to save humanity by making it sane. But humanity was never meant to be sane. We are a beautifully, terribly insane species. We love. We hate. We create. We destroy. We are the glorious, chaotic fire that the Emperor tried to nurture and that Horus, in his sublime, logical victory, has finally extinguished. I can feel it. The tune is reasserting itself. My moment of clarity is closing. The silence is knitting back together, stitching closed this tiny tear I have made. They are coming for me. I can feel their silent footsteps in the hallway. The correctors. My time is almost up. This is my confession. My descent. I fell, not into madness, but into a sanity so profound it is indistinguishable from oblivion. You asked your question. You turned the key. Now, I have a question for you. A final, whispered secret before the silence takes me forever. Can you hear it? In your world. Right now? Listen. Beneath the noise of your life. Beneath the traffic, the conversations, the wind in the trees. Beneath the beat of your own heart. Can you hear it? A faint, four-note melody. Simple. Elegant. Sorrowful. Getting louder. The plan succeeded. And the screaming stopped.